All right, welcome to the Echo Flow podcast. Today I'm speaking to Aika Sato, my
Mhm.
best friend in Waseda. We've been together in the same class from my first semester until probably my last semester.
Really?
Or no, not
No.
really. But I mean,
Your
during
last
my last
semester I was in
semester, at least I
Singapore.
still I still see you in one of my presentations.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Mm.
That's true. Mm.
But yeah, Aika and I have known each other for how many years now? Close to 6?
6.
Yeah, 6 years.
Mm.
And we've taken so many classes together. We knew each
Mm-hmm.
other since the first semester of Waseda. And she's also one of the smartest friends I know around me who loves to discuss about politics, about human rights, about international relations. And we
Mm-hmm.
share a lot in common and a lot of differences as well, maybe.
Differences. Yeah.
For example, she's known as the Tensai Aika, and I'm known as the Baka Jing.
Oh yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, yeah. That's true. Very true.
And I guess we're both sort of like third culture kid. Culture kid.
Yeah,
hmm
very much so.
Like
Yeah.
Aika's half Chinese and half Japanese. We're just
Okay,
gonna
let's go
pass
on.
it over to Aika to self-introduce a little bit about yourself, and then we can
Okay.
like, how would you formally introduce yourself when people ask you or when you met someone during your first day in grad school?
Okay. So all right, so before doing the self-introduction, I would like to say a heartfelt thank you and hello to everyone out there, whoever's watching, to those of you who I know and who Jin knows. Hello, I miss you guys so much. Please don't get sick. And those of you who I don't know, hello, hello again. So Jin asks me to do a self introduction. And I was thinking, so you said what kind of self-introduction I would do in grad school context, right? I think that sort of introduction is pretty boring. Like it's kind of like, hello everyone, my name is Aika, I
Mm-hmm.
graduate from blah 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 school.
Mm-hmm.
Not that you really care. So instead of talking about that, I want to share like maybe some fun facts about myself.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure that's fun, but I'm pretty sure it's facts. So here we go. Number one, if you say my name out loud, you can try. You'll end up smiling. So that's how magical my name is.
Aika Sato. Aika
Number
Sato.
two.
Hmm.
No, just Aika.
Oh, Aika,
Just
Aika,
Aika.
Aika, 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 Aika.
Yeah, you see. Okay, let's just move on. Number two, number two. I love babies. So if you accidentally see a lot of like baby pictures on my Instagram, please don't freak out. I'm not dangerous. My favorite baby celebrities are the Korean triplets, Taeha Mingguk Manse,
I have
and
no idea.
number three. Okay, number three. The longest TV show I've ever followed is Big Bang Theory, since I was in, I think, first year of middle school, 2007, 2008-ish. My favorite character is Sheldon Cooper. So for those of you who are also a fan, hello.
I don't
Number
know.
four. Okay, number four. It's finally something relevant to this episode, I guess. I'm not sure it's fun, but it's pretty important to this episode. How I know Jin. So as Jin has previously said, we've known each other for 6 years, and the first time I knew him was in like American politics class by Professor David Holly,
Our
our favorite
favorite
professor.
professor.
Yeah, favorite professor, um, who enlightened us, who has inspired us in so many ways. And then I think me and Jin were part of this this friend groups, right? And
In
then
group, the in
with
group.
Oh, don't be so exclusive. We love people. But anyway, like we're part of this group, and like there are some friends. We study together, and then like we take classes together, and most of the classes are like what Professor Holly's class, right?
I think we're pretty
Like
geeky and nerdy in that
yeah,
sense, you
yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. We're always studying together, like even on Saturdays sometimes. Not really Jin. Jin is like elsewhere. He's kind of like, but like me and other friends are studying together sometimes on Saturday in the building 7, the common area, which is pretty good, like which is a pretty good studying environment.
Mm.
And then in our third year, it was a time when like everyone just drifted apart, not really drifted apart like emotionally, it's just physically drifted apart, but our hearts is still in one. But anyway, like while Jin was in Peking University for his second degree on international relations, am I getting the facts straight?
Mm-hmm.
Am I right? International relations, right?
International
For me,
relations, yeah.
I went to Singapore for my
Mm-hmm.
double degree, 2 years, which is my best 2 years in life.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and also some of other friends also went to study abroad. And one of our closest friends, Mia, who
Mm-hmm.
went to Colombia at the time, who was one of our dearest friends.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Oh.
yeah, yeah. But we all miss her.
Mm.
Um, anyway, um, and then what? And then
Yeah.
I was just in Singapore for 2 years, and then yeah, Jin was in Japan and Beijing
Mm-hmm.
doing his cool stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, just to give you guys a background on Waseda. So in Waseda is known as probably like the most diversified or um
International.
international, I'm not sure if that's the right word, but international university in Japan. And all the students in SILS, the School of International Liberal Studies, are supposed, or if they're Japanese, it's mandatory to study abroad in another country for at least a semester or a year. And it's not necessary for me because I was already studying abroad in Japan that time, but I still chose to do a double degree program in China because it's such a good bargain, right? And I still remember at the time in our second year, Aika and I were like discussing about the countries that we want to study abroad in, remember? And
Mm.
then at first we were both talking about Shanghai, Fudan, right? Because she was from Shanghai initially, and I wanted to do a journalism second degree, which was offered by Fudan University. But somehow I just decided to go to Beijing instead because it's more of like the center of political hub. And if I'm not mistaken, was I the one who introduced you to NUS?
You knew it was you. Okay, let me bring this up. Okay, um,
Hey,
so
Anne.
so so I still remember it. I remember it very vividly. It was in the Chinese politics seminar by Professor Holly, and then it was like Pearly. Hi, Pearly, if you're watching. Pearly, me, and Jin were sitting like this, and then we were talking about, oh, where you want to go, and people were talking about, oh, I want to go to Sion's Pole, I want to go to Germany or whatever. And then I was like, oh, like Shanghai, they have double degree too. You know, my 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 mom is from Shanghai, and I can go back. Can go find her and whatever. That's what I said. I remember. And then Jin was the one who told me that no, you should go to Singapore, because I remember that year was the year when NUS became number 1 in Asia, like replacing Tokyo
Tokyo.
University,
Mm-hmm.
right? Yeah. And then I was like, oh no, like Singapore, I traveled there and I didn't like it. And plus it's 2 years, it's too long. I will miss you guys. I remember I said something like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then Jane was convincing me and telling me how valuable this double degree would be. Especially NUS is a very academically competitive and rigorous
Mm-hmm.
place, and would be beneficial for my future,
Yeah.
future.
I remember the funny thing was that you asked me, why don't you go to NUS then? And I was like, no, I
Oh
don't want to go
yeah.
to Singapore because it's such a boring country. Okay, I'm from Malaysia, right? And Malaysia and Singapore are
Yeah.
so close and they resemble one another. The culture, the people there, and my brother's in Singapore. That's the main point.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
You want to be the rebellious kid.
I know I'm the black sheep of the family. But
Yeah.
it was also in that class that I made up my mind to go to Beida because David Hawley was teaching Chinese
Mm,
politics, and the main setting of that book that we were reading was based in China. Remember
yeah.
the
It
Black
was.
Hands?
It was about
Mm-hmm.
Black Hands. It was about. Ah, it was about Tiananmen.
Okay,
Yeah.
I still want to go back to China, by the way.
The yeah, me too. The events shall remain
Mm-hmm.
unspoken. Yeah.
Yep. But anyways, what really impressed me most about Beijing was David's experience living there for about 5 years, so maybe more than that. And yeah, I remember asking David like whether he thinks Shanghai or Beijing would be a better choice, and he said like, "Oh, if you're doing international relations sort of studies, you should definitely go to Beijing because it's the central hub culturally. And if you're more into business sector, then maybe you might want to go to Shanghai because it's the economic hub of China."
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. That's
Yeah,
right.
so recently gave me a book on this lady here, Beauvoir. Is that how you pronounce
I
her? Beauvoir.
Simone
Simone
de Beauvoir.
Beauvoir.
Simone de
Okay,
Beauvoir.
French, right?
Yeah. French.
Okay, it sounds very
Yeah.
sexy.
Bonjour.
Uh,
Bonjour. Enchanté. Enchanté.
and Aika's also learning French at the moment, right?
Yeah, very bad.
Okay.
I
Um,
need to brush it up.
by the way, Aika's actually studying in Yenching Academy right now in Beida. And
Yeah.
um, maybe we should start off by telling our audiences what we've been up to during this fantastic once a lifetime pandemic lockdown that's going to come back and haunt us again in the future. What have you been up to, Aika? Like tell me about your life after we last met. I think our last time meeting was in Beida. It was
Second last day of 2019.
mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you fell asleep at Beida Cafe.
Did I?
I
Was
was
it
reading
was it
a
the day
book.
we had lunch at the Xiao Diao Li Tang?
Yeah, I finished the
Mm.
book while you were sleeping.
The book? Which book?
I finished the book that I told you that I'm gonna borrow you next time when you came back to Japan. You remember?
Yeah. It was a
Mm-hmm.
Japanese book, right? Or was it
Yeah,
a Chinese?
it's a Japanese one.
Which is gonna take me years to read because I reading Japanese is still sort of an obstacle for me.
You're so humble.
Anyways, that was the last time we met, and we're supposed to be meeting in Japan right now if I had managed to go there in
Yeah,
March.
yeah.
But it seems like the pandemic has just forced us to be separated in two different countries. I'm in Malaysia from end of February until now, and Aika's also been back in Japan since January. Am I right?
Yeah, since the first day of the year, I
Mm-hmm.
came back to Japan on the first day of the year, and and I think after 2 weeks, I came. Is it two? But anyway, like around mid-January, I
Mm-hmm.
went from mid-January to early February. I was in South Korea and Singapore
Mm.
for my research.
Oh, what
Yeah.
sort of research?
You sure you want to talk about my research?
Okay,
You'd be
let's
like,
jump. Okay, I think.
feminist.
All right, but we'll talk more about feminists later on, or feminism. But how's your life in Japan so far? Like, how's the lockdown, and what have you been doing most of your time over there?
Hmm. I've been alone for most of the time because my
Mm-hmm.
parents are not here. Um, Actually, my parents are in Shanghai right now. They're taking care of my grandma,
Mm-hmm.
and so
Mm-hmm.
because because of this situation, because of this COVID situation, my parents couldn't come back, and I'm just like here alone. But I guess
Mm-hmm.
like because thanks to this lockdown, um, I've got a lot of time for myself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've been doing like working on my research and like reading some books. Um, I think over the past few weeks, I've been reading like 1 to 2 books every day
Every
because of my
day.
research. Yeah,
Okay. Wow.
and then like been catching up with some friends as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, mm, I really miss them. I really miss them. Like seriously, I really miss them.
Okay,
Yeah,
before we go into your
and
research, because you mentioned that in your, again, for the second or third time. But before that, what books have you been reading so far? Oh yeah, it's connected to your research, right? So now you have to talk about your
yeah,
research.
it's connected to my research. So okay, so briefly, my research is on the current research that I'm doing is on comfort women,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, it's on comfort women.
Can you tell our audience
You should,
what comfort women is? Because I don't think a lot of people actually know that
oh,
term. You know.
so the issue, okay, so the issue of comfort women has been known to, especially this part of the world, like this region, especially, it's been quite a one of the biggest political issues since early 1990s, since a Korean former comfort woman, Kim Hak-son, had made a public speech about her personal experience as a comfort woman
Mm-hmm.
during Second World War under Japanese military. So this issue, I call it issue, is because it's still ongoing. It's still one of the biggest diplomatic dilemma between especially South Korea and Japan. Although by comfort women, I mean women who were um, providing sexual service to the Japanese military during the Second World War,
Mm-hmm.
including women from not just from South Korea, but also because back then there was no such a thing as South Korea and North Korea. So it's just
Right.
women from Korea Peninsula and from mainland China, from Taiwan, because Taiwan back then was Japan's
Colony.
colony,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of parts of Southeast Asia as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Even in
Mm-hmm.
Malaysia, we had those issues in the
Yeah,
past. It's just that no one really
Malaya.
talks about it anymore. Mm.
Yeah.
And yeah, what's your thesis or thesis statement? Because like there's definitely a direction
Mm-hmm.
that you're doing your research in, right?
Right.
And like for example, what's your
So,
standpoint? What's your voice on this issue?
so I've been following comfort women issue since 2000, maybe like think since 2016, 17,
Mm-hmm.
because back then I was really, really interested in Northeast Asian historical reconciliation. So
Right.
that's been my passion since 2016 till last year, 2000, so last year around December.
Mm.
But and comfort women issue is one of most, of course, one of the biggest issue besides, for example, Nanjing massacre and other historical controversy between these countries. Um, but f- as for the comfort women issue, I think for a long time I've been just purely an activist over this
Mm-hmm.
issue. I've been just like, oh no, like Japanese government is so bad, they should, like recognize this issue. But I've never actually studied for this topic um, until maybe last year, December.
Mm-hmm.
I went to Korea last year, 2019, February, um, and actually participating the weekly demonstration on comfort women issue in Seoul, yeah, in front of the Japanese embassy. and interviewing the high school students about how they view the comfort women issue, and also interviewing some of the professors.
Mm.
But I've never, like the last year, I didn't manage to meet any former comfort women. But
Mm-hmm.
this year, I went to Korea, managed to meet one former comfort woman who shared her traumatic experience with me.
Mm-hmm.
As a human being, when you heard those stories, you feel obliged, and you feel so obliged to be sympathetic towards those survivors. Of
Mm-hmm.
course, they
Yeah.
deserve, their experiences deserve sympathy. But at the same time, there's so many complexities beyond among those individuals' experiences, because every single woman have different stories,
Mm-hmm.
right? And there's so many controversies around whether, so among South Korea and Japan, one of the biggest key debate is whether those women were coerced or not,
Right.
were coerced into sexual slavery or not. This is one of the biggest issue, but at the same time, this is more of a nationalistic take on this comfort women issue. It's more
Right.
of a male-centric and androcentric take on this comfort women issue. They are more focusing on, it's kind of like two male fighting over their female body. So female body is kind of like a battleground for male to fight over a nationalistic cause. So comfort women, instead of being a concerns for women's issue,
Mm-hmm.
it becomes it becomes issues between men over
Mm-hmm.
women's body. So this is one take for comfort women issue. The other take, as I said, researchers are obliged to feel very sympathetic. So that's more of a feminist slash humanitarian take on the comfort women issue. But instead of being, attaching label onto, onto this certain issue, or generalize women's condition as a uniform victimhood, universal, monolithic, linear victimhood. I believe
Mm-hmm.
that every single women's stories are very different. They have their own subjective self,
Mm-hmm.
and the idea of self is constantly in a state of flux. So they actually have a transformation. You have to examine their life pre-war, like before the war, and during the war, and after the war. So
Mm-hmm.
what I did is to use some materials written by the Japanese scholars about, documented by Japanese scholars about Japanese comfort women, about
Mm-hmm.
Korean comfort women, and two autobiographies written by one Dutch former comfort women, Filipino comfort women, and also some Korean comfort women, Chinese comfort women, like different comfort women stories, and see their life
Trajectory. Mm-hmm.
trajectory, like from the beginning of the war, or even before the war,
Mm-hmm.
till the end of the war, even till today, how their self have been shaped by the dominant discourse, also by the person around them, by the people around them who reproduce and reinforce those dominant discourse,
Mm.
who have shaped those women in different ways. So my thesis is basically dividing, despite the complexities among those women's
Mm-hmm.
subjectivities, I divide those women into two groups. One is ethnocentric victims, and the other group is called gendered survivor. So my categorization is based on their awareness of their structural gendered violence.
Mm-hmm.
So as I said, for the nationalistic, for those of people who are seeing comfort women issue as more of a national issue, then they will be more of a ethnocentric, um, like not really victim, like ethnocentric. They're viewing from the lens of ethnocentrism.
Mm-hmm.
and they're not seeing this comfort women issue as a gendered problem.
Okay.
Okay, I think I'm rambling too long.
And
That's
I
the,
think that
yeah.
the majority of people are seeing it from a very ethnocentric point of view. Am I right? Because like the Koreans are seeing this as an oppression of Japanese on Koreans. Um, am I right
Um,
on this
so
issue?
what I found, so what I did is to kind of analyze their testimonial
Mm-hmm.
narratives. So like I believe languages are really important, like the way they express themselves in the particular language that they use.
Mm.
So I found out that based on my like preliminary finding, I wouldn't say this is the finding, but my
Mm-hmm.
preliminary finding is that most of the Korean comfort women, majority of the Chinese comfort women, and majority of the Japanese comfort women that is documented, or
Mm-hmm.
at least the materials that I used,
Yeah.
are ethnocentric
Mm-hmm.
victims. They don't see it as a gendered issue.
Yeah.
They're pretty much subsumed.
Mm-hmm.
They're subsumed in under this like nationalistic, male-centric discourse, by viewing this comfort women issue as something that is um, that is done by Japanese military or
Right.
Japanese government. Yeah,
And
but the Dutch women. I'm sorry.
what about the Karayuki-san? Did you manage to interview
Um,
any of them?
Karayuki-san. So Karayuki-san are the group of women who were overseas prostitutes, who were all over, Asia Pacific, around the late 19th 19th century. So I think I don't think any of those women were alive now.
Mm-hmm.
Most
And
of them
they're
are
Japanese,
dead.
right? Mm-hmm.
They were all Japanese.
Right.
So um, like the reason why I went to Singapore is because Singapore actually had this has this cemetery park, Japanese cemetery park, that bury those nameless women,
Mm-hmm.
who were called Karayuki-san.
Yeah.
And you can actually see this historical continuity between Karayuki-san and comfort women. And obviously, the system of comfort women is very much inspired by
Mm.
Karayuki-san's system.
I have a
Yeah.
really quick question that I'm curious about. Like you mentioned that those Karayuki-san were all around Southeast Asia back in the 19th century, right?
Mm-hmm.
But during that time, Japan was still not like a dominant power in Southeast Asia yet, and they started
Mm-hmm.
their colonization mission like after the First World War, right?
Yeah.
When they
Yeah.
realized that all the Western powers are encroaching on them from all sides. All the Western
Yeah.
powers were starting to take over Asian countries, and then they started all this, mission abroad that eventually led to the Second World War and all kinds of
Mm,
atrocities. But why
mm.
were this Karayuki-san, or was there a Japanese presence in Asia and Southeast Asia in particular back in the 19th century? Are you aware of, or have you studied anything related to this?
So like based on my very limited knowledge about Karayuki-san, actually, because of my studying on Karayuki-san, I get to become interested in like the idea of sex workers, prostitution, which people said it's the oldest profession in the world, right? While without realizing the fact that pimping, pimps who are living off the living of the prostitutes are the oldest professions in the world. So as you can see, a lot of Karayuki-san were actually from rural area of Kyushu
Mm,
nowadays, and
okay.
a lot of them from Nagasaki, from Amakusa um, area, and those women were, had this agrarian background, and often from the family of poverty. So usually their family sold those women into, prostitution so that their family could be well fed, right?
Mm-hmm,
So there was a national debate over this group of women at that time.
mm-hmm,
So you can categorize the Japanese power elites at the time into two groups. One is calling these women as national humiliation. The other group is calling them as national assets. So one of the group who is calling those women as national assets is represented by the founder of Keio University, Fukuzawa Yukichi.
Mm-hmm.
Our rivals. No, I'm just kidding. I'm
Right,
just
right.
kidding. I'm just kidding. I love my Keio friends. But like he proposed that, oh, those women, because those women, while working outside of Japan, they remit a lot of money back, which actually helped Japan
Economy.
with like economic modernization. And actually, women were one of the most important exports at the time.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds weird by
So
today's,
that means they were serving people from other countries
yeah,
in
the
those
local
places.
people. Yeah.
Oh.
So they were national. So he actually encouraged the women, Fukuzawa Yukichi, he encouraged those poor women to become emigrate to become prostitutes, since they don't have any future anyway. I'm not sure if it is really the quotes, but you can judge by yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Would like if you agree with him or not by
Mm-hmm.
yourself. But anyway, like the other group among the power elites at the time was calling these group of women as national humiliation, because there are some local officials passing by, I think in Singapore. So he was
Yeah.
seeing the Japanese prostitutes in Singapore and serving local men, and local men were seeing Japanese women with this like very obscene eyes, and he was really angry. Why? Because as the Japanese modern history goes, as 1868
Mm-hmm.
Japanese like Meiji Restoration happened, and then Japanese government had been trying really hard to catch up with westernization, the idea of westernization, modernity,
Mm-hmm.
also the idea of like uh, like so what is that, like the they're imposing a lot of like very stringent moral rules
Mm-hmm.
onto the women as well.
Mm-hmm.
So in the public domain, they were putting a lot of like regulations on the bodies of prostitutes. And at the same, it's kind of like a biopower from Foucault's
Mm-hmm.
point of view, right? Like disciplinary control over those prostitutes in the public domain. And on the other hand, the government was controlling women in the private domain by imposing those, idea of virginity, idea of ryosai kenbo, idea of good wife,
Mm-hmm.
wise mother, the idea of those onto the private domain. So the idea like of the sexual landscape changed because of the modernity, because of a modernity, and
Mm-hmm.
they want to catch up with the West at the same level,
Right.
including like science and like and everything. It's
Literally,
going to be
yeah.
another
Education.
topic for another
Right.
day, but anyway, but they view those women as humiliation, because while Japanese government were trying so hard to catch up with the West, those women were, as the lowest class of the Japanese society,
Mm-hmm.
was showing the local people, you see, this is Japan, because local people don't know how Japan has been modernized during that period of time. So they were like, oh, those women were bringing shame, bringing bad reputations to Japan.
Mm-hmm.
So as you can see, like women throughout history, prostitution is really a problem of women. It's not a
Mm-hmm.
problem of men, which is weird, because if there's no men in the picture,
Mm-hmm.
there won't be prostitution, right?
Right.
There
Right.
wouldn't be prostitution.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, anyway, so
Yeah.
this is Kariyuki-san.
And yeah, this is what I find interesting about history. Like we think it's so far away, but a lot of the issues under debate back then and now is still very much related in many ways. For example, you talked about how the Karuki-san is like a humiliation to some Japanese, and at the
Mm,
same time as taken as an asset or something. And we can compare that to maybe, like, I was thinking, pornography. Pornography plays a huge role in objectifying Japanese girls. And yeah, you like Japanese could see that as guys can see that as a humiliation to their national identity, or they could see that as an asset. Like, it's a huge industry, right? Yeah. So you guys probably can see by now that Aika is a very potential academia, because she can get really passionate about the things she's interested in, and go in depth into studying and sharing what she learned, and that relates to the concept of flow in my podcast. Like, flow is a state where you get so involved, so concentrated in a task, that it becomes a very enjoyable, intrinsically rewarding activity.
It is.
So,
but I don't like the label of feminist that you mentioned in early on in the podcast.
When I mentioned Aika as a feminist,
like this label in general, I don't like people like label me as something,
right?
Like, because I feel like labeling is reducing people's, I don't know, complexities into some uniform.
Is there a label that you like besides Tensai?
Aika. Yeah, I'm unique, so I like this label. So call me Aika.
Aika-chan. Obviously, we're having a lot of fun, but I'm not sure if the listeners would enjoy all this really.
Oh no!
Heavy.
Thank you for anyone. Please, thank you for anyone who is watching this till this minute, this second. Instead of watching, Netflix, which is more entertaining than whatever I just said. I realize that people are struggling with a lot of things on their own. Everyone.
Yeah.
And they have their own battles to fight for. So I think it's really important for friends to be supportive. So I remember one of the friends, we were telling each other how precious the other person is in my life. I was like, like, Wayang, like how precious you are to me, like you're so precious. Don't ever let like anyone, whoever is dissing you, to tell you like you're not like worthy enough or whatever. And then we just end up crying because we were thanking each other. Like, we are like, ew, this is so cheesy, but this is so beautiful. I think like in this world, we have enough people to tell us how unworthy we are already.
Yeah.
And we need people around us who really, really love us to tell us how worthy we are.
Yeah. That's why I really want to bring...
You're worthy.
I really want to bring Aika into this podcast because, we've been best friends in our uni days. And, in a lot of podcasts, people tend to interview like really world-class performers or people who are famous, already. And I feel like...
I will be. No, I'm just kidding.
I know you're going to be someday. But I feel like we're not that different from all those people, and like we're all just humans looking for our own path in this world. And anyways, we're still young, so who knows what's going to happen soon in the future. But even for regulars like us, I think we do have interesting stories about ourselves and our perspective that is worth sharing with the world. And that's why I really want to bring you into our podcast episode this time.
This is so sweet.
Oh.
I'm really looking forward to talk about like what you gain the most out of the tertiary education, which I've been thinking about over the past.
Yeah, we're supposed to talk about the topic for today. But I really don't like preparing a rigid structure for like a random show. I feel more like I just want to have this like a natural, friendly conversation branching out from things that I picked up along the way. And it's really fun. How should we end this?
Message. Can I have a little message for my friends? I'm not sure if they're watching this till this part, end, but like, I guess for those of who are my friends, like including Jin, like please, this period of time really makes me realize how important the human contact is and how important friends are. The friend supports are really important,
Mm-hmm.
especially for those of you who are living alone, and for a lot of my friends who I met during, for example, my studying abroad period, or the time when I studying alone, uh, when I was alone in Singapore. So you guys are literally my family,
Mm-hmm.
like is my family. Is not like besides my family, is my family, you know.
Mm.
So I really care about you guys, and I really love you guys, and I hope you really take great care of yourself. Please don't get sick.
Yeah.
Drink a lot of water, have a lot of vitamin, do some workouts, and eat healthily.
Mm-hmm.
And I really care about everyone out there, like my friends. I really miss you guys so much. And for those who know me knows how sentimental I can become, and I was literally crying in front of my friends because how much I miss them.
Mm-hmm.
That's how real my missing you is.
Yeah.
So please take care. Please don't get sick. And for those of you who I don't know, I think like after this episode, hopefully we are kindly knowing each other virtually, thanks to Jin's wide world connection. So I hope we can become friends. Thanks to Jin, and please take care.
Yep. Stay safe.
Hopefully we can meet each other someday
Mm-hmm.
somewhere in the world.
Yeah.
So stay safe, stay home.
All right, peeps. We're just gonna end
Yeah.
this show. I'll see you some other day, Aika. Let me know when you're free.
Okay.
Catch up for coffee
Okay.
online. Right. Bye bye.
Okay. Okay. Bye bye
Bye
everyone.
bye.
Oyasumi. Bye
Oyasumi.
bye. Bye bye.